self-care has something to do with sustainability and also has to do with leadership. And sustainable leadership has something to do with caring for yourself and for the people you are working with. So that's maybe the connection to our topic. I do it. I jump into it. The first thing I would like to talk about is leadership. Why does it matter? The UNESCO, in its latest program, ESD 2030, addresses the leaders of educational institutions and tells them that they have to do something in regard of their institutions they are leading. So now the leaders come into focus. Studies show that ESD is still not firmly implemented into schools and into many other educational institutions too. The UNESCO goes a step further and tells us it's not only about the curriculum, but also about the whole institution. So the whole institution approach is the current approach to ESD, which means that the whole institution, the whole school or university or whatever institution it might be, has to be aligned with sustainability principles. Not only curriculum, but also the environment, waste reduction, energy consumption, and all of these things. This is system change. The whole system has to change, and system change is a responsibility of the leaders. School effectiveness research tells us that the principals are playing an essential role in the quality of a school, in the outcomes and the learnings of students and everything. And the question is, are principals in a similar way responsible and effective regarding the implementation of ESD in schools? Not only in schools, but in other institutions too. What do we know about this? Not much. It's basically a white spot on the map. There are very few studies that explore the field, but those studies who did underscore the importance of the principles. So they play an important role. Okay, those studies who did show that the leaders are important and are influential. I did myself studies with colleagues from the US and from China with principles that also showed this importance. So there are some tasks that leaders have in regard to implementing ESD. They need to create or to support the development of a shared vision within their schools. They need to organize a participative process of school development that involves all stakeholders. They need to emphasize sustainability in daily life. It's not only something of Sunday speaks, but it's speeches, it has to be implemented in everyday life. They need to support the staff in teaching ESD, and they need to offer students opportunities to also initiate some change. So students have to be involved in the whole process. And last not least, principals need to support this endeavor wholeheartedly. It's not only about saying something, it's about the attitude and really standing behind what you are trying to do. So I will go very shortly into two examples how leaders can be prepared for their job At Ludwigsburg we have 2 master study programs, one German, Bildungsmanagement, and one international education management. Both are graduate programs, 2 years long, and people are working, so it's an in-service program during this time. They are preparing for leadership positions, but part of those participants is already in a leadership position, and they come from different fields, from schools, from adult education, from universities, and also from companies, so it's a very diverse field. The German program. The international program is similar in many points, but it has a focus on development cooperation, and we have participants from diverse fields, but also from many countries. Our alumni and students come from 5 continents and almost 80 countries at the moment, so we cover quite a lot of a wide range. What did we do to try to introduce these students, these people to ESD? We did 2 things. One is to go through each of the modules and try to connect them to sustainability, to goals, to the SDGs and topics, and try to relate each of the modules. And additionally, we developed a new optional module, Leadership for ESD, for both study programs. In BMA it's already implemented, in the international program it's in preparation. Topics: sustainability, ESD, and leadership for ESD. And we now try to add a new topic, and that is our topic today, spiritual dimensions. So this leads to our leading question for our presentation. And I should not stay alone here. I have a colleague who is responsible for the religious part. So I have to present my own, but this is a dialogue, and the presentation is developed in a dialogue. Our 2 leading questions are: how can we integrate spirituality in educational programs for educational leaders, and what can we learn from religious pedagogy? One of the participants of our study said, it's not only a question of skills, the right attitude towards sustainability is pivotal. And attitude goes back to values. And where do values come from? From religions and from spirituality. Because of that, I'm thinking about these things and would like to integrate them into the program. So it makes sense when you are developing a program for educational leaders to have a look at studies that explore the field of sustainable leadership in general. And colleagues, Frey and Igel, they covered a lot of studies and summarized them, and here are the main points of approaches for sustainability leadership. Leaders are thought of as dedicated change agents. So they need to change. They think of an organization with a learning organizational paradigm. So the whole organization can develop and can learn. It's a question of spiritual way of being, interconnected, inclusive, relational, mindful. The organization culture is based on altruistic ethical values, or at least the leaders try to base the values of the organization on this. It's an open organizational and social stakeholder system, so not only the shareholders are important, but also the clients, the staff, the suppliers, and all of them. And the vision and the purpose of the whole institution is related to sustainability. Overall, the emphasis is on multiple outcomes, not only on productivity, commitment, and profit as usual, but also on social, environmental outcomes. When you think about introducing spiritual dimensions into this program, what can we learn from religious pedagogy? I have to read these words now from my colleague. The first thing that she thought of is revolution, think new. There are many voices calling for revolution, not a violent but a silent revolution. They demand a new thinking. The Gospel of Mark begins with the programmatic words, repent and believe in the gospel. In a more liberal translation, it reads, think afresh and trust the good news. Paul emphasizes the unity of all believers, regardless of gender, social status, or ethnic origin. In early Christianity, community sharing and equality of all people were practiced, e.g. Paul in Galatia 3. Today we experience this in forms of solidarity-based agriculture or a communal division of labor. Philosopher Eva von Redeker calls for nothing less than a quiet revolution. In general, it means thinking out of the box. The second thing is freedom and valuing. Freedom is the basic condition for transformative action. Freedom is only possible among equals, as Hannah Arendt writes. The basis for freedom is equality for all. The equality of all is a Christian belief that has also found its way into general human rights. Also, valuing is a meta-competence. There are not specific values at all. It is necessary to value all, people and nature. In the European Sustainability Competence Framework, valuing sustainability comes first. Values are constructs and people can choose with values to prioritize in their lives. Recourse to the tried and tested. The cultural dimension of change is often neglected, e.g. the competences of spiritualism or cultural or religious traditions, like celebrations. This third dimension reminds us that not everything needs to be invented anew. We can, at least in some regard, get back to what has proved as useful, often over a very long time. Here are three aspects. Religious usually take a holistic approach, such as the connection between body and soul. Another point is respect for creation. A third important area of religions is the history, which in some cases goes back thousands of years. Somehow, all the fundamental issues have been there before, even if the respective historical context changes. And we can relate these 3 points to what Professor Stonechild was talking about 2 hours ago. Spirituality for ESD leaders. we thought about what we think that is essential and what we would like leaders to know and to support and to feel about when it's about spirituality. And we came up with a few things with sensibility for the unavailable, gratuity, gratitude for the undeserved, retinity, everything is connected, solidarity, helping each other, rituality, celebrating life. And last of all, value and dignity for all, people, other livings, inanimate nature. And all these points can be connected to many of the presentations that we heard until now. So the question is, how can we teach it? And actually, we cannot teach it. We can only offer some things, and then we can see or may see what people make out of this. My colleague with other colleagues, she developed a spiral of transformative learning. I cannot dive deeper into this because of time limits, but it's based on three central aspects: new becoming at the beginning with some points that are connected to this, some competencies. It goes further with new thinking, with other points that are connected to that, and in the end, new acting. So in the end, we are acting. That means it goes from inner to outward. We begin with ourselves, new being, develop our thinkings further, and then we come into action. And maybe on this spiral that goes on and on, we can base some offerings for people who want to base their acting as leaders on spiritual aspects. We think that it has to have two legs. One leg is conventional, so to say, academic learning, teaching and learning, with documents, excursions, green campuses, discussions, reports, and the visits to non-university learning locations. And the other leg is practicing spirituality. But this is very difficult. You cannot go into a university and ask students to pray with you. So you may offer some things that one or the other would like to include into his life or her life, and you can invite to maybe experience some things. For example, this morning we were chanting, and this is a spiritual practice too. So there are some things that may be included, maybe as offerings, or as something people can watch or read about as practiced spirituality. So that's our thoughts so far, how we might include spiritual dimensions into programs for educational leaders, into our two programs at Ludwigsburg University, but also maybe in other programs for leaders, not only educational leaders, but also leaders of companies or whatever, since the question of sustainability is a question that needs to be raised in all organizations. Thank you.